We are so glad you're here for another episode of Against the Grain.
I'm Jessica Elise Kern.
And I'm Michael Stewart Foley. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. This episode will be sharing a powerful interview we recorded at our annual festival that took place in Saratoga Springs this past year. Tennessee State Representative Justin Jones was introduced to us by Farm Aid board member Margo Price.
And even if you aren't from Tennessee, you may have heard of Representative Jones. He was on the national scene quite a bit over the last 2 years as he unapologetically advocated for his district.
Hi, my name is Justin Jones. I serve as the youngest black representative of my state of Tennessee and also represent the most diverse district, which is District 52 in Nashville. And I serve as a member of the Agriculture Committee in Tennessee, which is my connection, and got introduced to Farm Aid from Margo Price. And so really excited to be here.
His political career has been pretty wild so far. First, he was expelled from the Tennessee legislature in April 2023 during a debate about public safety, where he called for gun reform after a horrific mass shooting at a Nashville school.
Although Justin won a special election to be returned to the Tennessee House days later, he was once again silenced during another debate on public safety. He felt this censure was in retaliation for proposing a vote of no confidence against Republican House Speaker Cameron Sexton.
He gave an overview that day, right after all this went down at the House. Take a listen.
Hey y'all, we have an update. Just left the House chamber. The Democrats walked out of the chamber in protest after Cameron Sexton decided to abuse his gavel and call for a vote so that I could not even speak for the rest of the session. He said it was because of speaking off topic. And so what we're seeing is this misapplication, this abuse of rules under the leadership of Speaker Cameron Sexton. Members of the public were taken out of the gallery. I was told I was going to be silent. Our caucus walked out in solidarity because what's happening is not democratic. It is authoritarianism. It's very troubling what we're witnessing here. You can see that the Capitol is surrounded, by troopers. This does not look like a democratic body anymore. It is very troubling, the trajectory that we're on. And really what he was trying to do was silence by vote of no confidence. But what he does not know is that he's only guaranteed that more people will show up because it shows how fragile his power is. His attacks on democracy, his attacks on dissent will not go unchallenged.
As we'll hear in our interview with Justin, Speaker Sexton's retaliation has taken many forms, some of which have backfired.
My story about being on the Agriculture Committee is a little interesting. So I was put on that committee by the Speaker of the House as what he intended to be a punishment. He put me as the only non-rule member on our committee, thinking that I would be at a disadvantage. But really, it's been the most amazing place to fight for food justice as a critical part of our movement, to look at organizing in solidarity between urban and rural communities, looking at it as a place to advance policies of environmental justice, advancing policies of trying to support young farmers and black farmers and brown farmers, trying to really diversify what agriculture is in our state. And so what was intended to be a punishment has actually been one of the greatest gifts that the Speaker gave me, and it's led me here to Farm Aid now. And so really excited to be on the committee.
After a really rough start, when the actual work started to take precedence, he was able to make a lot of progress with his peers.
It has been a place of great bipartisanship that I've seen, because they didn't expect me to go down to their districts, to some of these rural districts, and meet with farmers and hear about things like, the right to repair their own farm equipment. So I was the one who sponsored our right to repair agricultural equipment bill. I was the one who was the only member of our committee to go down to Murray County, which is a rural county, meet with cattle farmers about what the pollution of the Duck River, the most biodiverse river in North America, would mean for their cattle farms. And so really building connections and building coalitions to move our state forward as a member of that committee.
I thought that this was so interesting because the day before we interviewed Justin, we heard from so many farmers and organizers at Farm Aid's Farmer Forum who were talking about the same things: how to transcend division that's so often constructed in the media by labeling people left and right, rural and urban, red state and blue state. So we asked Justin about his experience in confronting this kind of dynamic in Tennessee and in the South.
I think, what this is really about is, like, so often we are told that southern states like Tennessee are supposed to, are stagnant, that this is what we're left with. And oftentimes as I travel, you even hear people who say, right off the South. But what I really believe is that through work like what we're doing in the Agriculture Committee, we are building a new South, one that is multiracial, multi-generational, that is rooted in care for each other, rooted in racial justice, rooted in policies that uplift as opposed to beat down, and that, rooted in solidarity as opposed to fear and division. And so that's a new South that we're building. And so being on this committee has really, for me, opened my eyes to, what is this movement of folks who are told that we're so different, or that we are, supposed to have these stereotypes of each other. What does it mean when we come together? And when we come together, the system of what I call plantation politics collapses, because they don't know how to maintain their hold on power anymore. And my message to folks across this nation is that, let us not write off the South, because if we want to change this nation, it's going to come from the South. W.E.B. Du Bois said, "So goes the South, as goes the nation." And so if we want to change, this nation, we have to invest in the South. We have to support the South. And really, this is also an issue of multiracial democracy. If we study history in Tennessee, black farmers were put off their land, put off their way of producing food for themselves and their families for registering to vote. And so we've seen food and access to food weaponized in states like Tennessee. And to this day, my district is the most diverse district, a majority black and brown district. It is not by accident that my district is a food desert. That's not an accident. That is strategic, and that is intentional. And so the more we can build coalitions with folks who are producing our food, and also talk about urban farming and really addressing the trauma that a lot of communities feel when it comes to agricultural work, and seeing that as a source of healing for our people, is going to be key in advancing us forward.
This is a crucial point as a new administration takes office. It's important to remember that working together brings about the most success.
For sure. Even when it feels hard, like there are no commonalities or middle ground, we have to work to find them so we don't get stuck. Justin also talks about the power of music in movement organizing. And this is so important to us because, of course, building community among farmers, artists, and the public is what Farm Aid is all about.
Yeah, our movement would be nothing without music. I come from a place called Music City, Nashville. And I think music is that great connector. Music is a way to amplify our collective voice. Music is a way to connect to ancestors as well. I'm really excited to hear Mavis Staples, one of the voices of civil rights songs, "We Shall Not Be Moved." This is what music has done. Music has been a healing source for us, because how do we sustain in this work? When you stand up against multinational corporations that want to have a monopoly on food, that is going to get tiring. It's going to burn you out. And so music can undergird us. It can bring us together. And spaces like this, I really believe, are necessary to sustain us in this work. It gives us a vision. It gives us joy to sustain. And it also gives us healing and undergirds us to keep going forward.
Your hat says farming is the future. So I was curious if you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, so being an agriculture committee, this is a campaign that my office has initiated, because we want to get more young people into farming. One of my initiatives in the legislature has been trying to uplift young farmers and reach out to young farmers and make sure that they have, we remove the barriers that keep young farmers from being able to access, a sustainable living. And so farming is the future. It's been the past, present, but it also is going to be vital for our future, because it's also, about our connection to land. And my grandmothers would always tell me, they said, baby, if you care for the land will care for you. And that's the lesson that will guide us into this future, where we see people who see the land as exploitable, as discardable. No, it is vital for us to survive in the future. And so to me, farming is something that our generation is taking up. And hopefully we'll address, what we're seeing in my state.
One of the things I most appreciate about Justin's analysis is that it is rooted in this deep understanding of history. Not only American history and Tennessee history, but in the history of the civil rights movement and all of the movements that came out of it. One of Justin's mentors is Diane Nash, a civil rights legend who led the lunch counter sit-ins in Nashville and the Freedom Rides.
Yeah, it's clear that even when faced with fierce opposition, not unlike the civil rights activists faced in the 1960s, there's inspiration to be drawn from those who went before us. And I appreciate that he emphasizes the strength we gain when we work together, and how the issues that seemingly impact one group ultimately touch us all. This type of thinking is important as we continue to work in our polarized country and political system.
To those who, even on the other side of the aisle of me, this issue of food justice, when we fight for food justice, we're fighting for them and their children too. And so this is an issue of not left or right, but it really is an issue of right and wrong, of who we want to be as a nation. And if we at the root, I believe we can be a nation that cares for each other, that nourishes. So many of our kids are in fight or flight mode, but we want them to be able to flourish. We want them to be able to be their whole selves. And the key to that grounding is being able to have nourishing food to sustain you and to give you health. And so that's the future we're fighting for.
But as Justin points out, it's an uphill battle to stay the course when the dominant narrative and power structures are pitted against you.
In Tennessee, we have a saying that a dying mule kicks the hardest. And so I think that the reason that they're deflecting so much is because they recognize that they're losing power. You know, I come, in my district, I'm the first non-white representative of my district. I'm the youngest in our legislature. And obviously last year, a lot of people may know that we were expelled. But, you know, the reason we were expelled is because we represent a movement that represents a new South. You know, Southern segregationists would have a saying. They said, the South is going to rise again. And I reject that. I say, no, the South is going to rise anew. And we represent that when we center communities that are impacted, when we center our solidarity across multiracial, multi-generational, multi-faith lines. Like, we are building something new. And so every time they attack us, to me, that's confirmation that we are actually onto something, that we are effective, that we are building something. Because if we were not effective, they would not try so hard to divide and isolate us from, you know, each other. And so I think my hope lies in the fact that we're not in this alone. That, you know, I've seen so many coalitions, even working in the Agriculture Committee, been able to build, you know, this regional solidarity where we're seeing our issues as intertwined. And even on the Agriculture Committee, when this corporation came from out of state to try and pollute the river in one of these rural districts, you know, these folks down there who I walked in their house and they're watching, you know, Fox News, and we were able to talk, and they said, you know, you were the only member of this committee who came down to talk to us. And we don't vote on all the same stuff, but you're the only one who cared to come down here. That's, to me, what gives me hope, is that they're saying, you know, proximity is creating a movement of care for each other, and it's removing the caricatures that they create of us. You know, they want people to be afraid of a representative like me because they think that I'm, you know, some radical. But really, it's not radical to say that people should have food to eat. What is radical is a system that profits off of starvation of people. And I hope that, you know, when we look down on this time in history, that, you know, we know that we're on the right side of history, and that future generations will be proud of where we stood in this time, and that we were willing to stand up when you know, we're facing some of the most powerful industries, the most powerful special interests in this nation, but we're willing to stand up because we were fighting for a nation that they would inherit, you know, in the coming years.
No war will ever be declared. Come going. No economical exploitation. No political down. Get ready, y'all. Come go with me. Think you're able. Come go with me.
That was If You're Ready, Come Go With Me from Mavis Staples' powerhouse Farm Aid 2024 performance.
She was spectacular that day, as always. Jeff, my takeaways from this interview with Justin Jones are that standing up to industry and special interests is not easy, but it's what Farm Aid has always done and will continue to do. As John Mellencamp likes to say, Farm Aid has been slugging it out for farmers for 40 years.
Corporations have enormous power and ever-increasing political influence over every step of our food system, farm to fork. They manipulate the markets, push down prices paid to farmers, and unfortunately, in so many cases, drive those farmers out of business. In Season 2, we'll cover how this hurts the farming, ag, and ranching communities.
And we'll talk about how that impacts consumers as well as our environment. No one, including our planet, comes out of a corporate concentration scenario unscathed except the corporations.
Indeed. We want to thank Representative Justin Jones for sitting down with us backstage at Farm Aid 2024 and for all the work he does.
What did you think of this episode? Let us know by emailing us at podcast@farmaid.org or give us a shout out on Farm Aid social media, which is @FarmAid on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Threads. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel too, where you can watch almost 40 years of performances and other content.
And I know we always say it, but it really means a lot to the podcast if you would share this with your friends and subscribe on your podcast app of choice. Oh, and take a minute to give us a rating. Against the Grain was written and produced by us, with sound editing by Endhouse Media and direction from Dawn Sorokin. Thank you so much to Micah Nelson for composing and performing our theme music.
And thank you to all the farmers out there. We'll talk to you next time.